Welcome to the Happiness Happens podcast. I'm Simona Costantini, blogger, storyteller, and life enthusiast. Each week, I will bring you an idea, guest, or positive thought to help inspire you to create happiness and live on purpose. We decide the stories we tell ourselves and where we choose to invest our energy. It's time to cultivate a positive mind for a positive, more meaningful life. I'm so grateful you popped in. Now let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm super excited. Today we have Luke Burrows, who is here all the way from the UK. And Luke and I met through Instagram, and it really proves that connections and relationships can be built really across the world, and you can meet people and have relationships with them. So it's super exciting. What I love so much about Luke is his content is super, super inspirational. And I really feel like as a person, he is as well. And the things that he writes and his thoughts and the ideas that he has are really inspirational, and it really makes you think, and it adds a lot of value to your thoughts. So before we say hi to Luke, I just want to let you know that he is the creator of Grow Together. He's a podcaster, an entrepreneur, and he helps aspiring world changers and the next generation of leaders ignite their passions and make their ideas happen through personal development and entrepreneurship. So Luke, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure.
Isn't it? It's so funny how things come around full circle, huh?
I know. It was a couple of months ago I brought you on to my show, and now I'm on your show. So yeah, it's just awesome to be here.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I wanted to start out and just ask you, for everyone who might not know you yet, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story and the journey that brought you to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you quite rightly said, I am in the UK, 23 years of age, and I first came across this world of entrepreneurship and personal development. I think I was about 20 or so, but since I left college midway through the second year when I was 17, I always knew then I made the decision, I wanted to run my own business, but 17, I knew nothing about business whatsoever. So I did decide to get a business apprenticeship. Now, going into this, I was like, yes, I'm going to learn all these amazing things about business. And it just didn't turn out like that. I was pretty much just that admin guy, and I fell into the 9 to 5. And so yeah, I'd done that for a few years, which actually led to some mental health challenges because I really hated it, and so that led to depression, anxiety, and some other challenges as well. Then I think it was January 2015. I kind of had a eureka moment, so to speak, and I just Luke, what are you doing? You wanted to run your own business, you're not doing it. So I just dived into it then. And I wanted to build my own clothing line brand. So I started with that. And then I tried some other different business models, so like affiliate marketing, network marketing, which all completely failed. But those led me to personal development. And then it was 2017, and it was October. And I realized, again, I had another one of my eureka moments, and I realized that I wasn't the only young person who had lots of questions, who had lots of confusion around careers and what they wanted to do, and purpose and passions and everything like this. So that's where Grow Together came from, because I wanted to build a community of people of ideally, young people, but since, we've grown and we've got people of all ages who believe there's more to life than the 9 to 5, or believe there's more to life than just meets the eye in general, and want to go out there and contribute to the world in a meaningful way, create positive change, and just help other people to live their best life as well. So that's pretty much where Grow Together came from. I did a trial period for a few months, and I launched it properly in the January of 2018. And beginning of this year, we launched the Grow Together Academy, which is the e-learning platform that I'm building and putting together. So at Grow Together now, we have 4 main pillars, we call them. So we have the blog, where our community members and other inspirational people can contribute with guest posts and that. We have the podcast. So I've just added the podcast as well. So that's going to be the Grow Together podcast, where I'm going to be interviewing our community members, hearing their stories and challenges and plans and hopes for the future. We have the community, which when I first launched Grow Together was like the main part, and then with the academy, which we e-learning platform, which I added beginning of this year. So yeah, it's been quite the journey. And yeah, along the way, I've met some amazing people. You've virtually met Arsenio, haven't you? Who I now do a podcast with as well, motivational mentors. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got to where I am today.
That's crazy. What a fun like journey. And I can't believe I actually didn't know that you were 23. I can't believe, how much you've accomplished. Like it's amazing. And I think you've done what most people could hope for is realize from early on what you really, really want to do and how you want to be living your life. And so you're really able to set the tone for like the rest of your life, right? Because sometimes most people don't find that until a little bit later on. Like I know for myself, I didn't even know what personal development was until like a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah, yeah.
mean? So it's nice to see you have so much opportunity in front of you. But you said something in your, in your a little bit of your intro, and I kind of wanted to touch on it really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when you were talking about, all the mental health challenges you started realizing you had, and how you made a switch from no, like I don't want to be living like this, to finally being like, you know what, um, I want to be doing more, and like I want to be doing X, Y, and Z. So how did you make that small switch? Like what was the technique, for a lack of a better words, on
Mm.
how did you get from that one point to the other?
Yeah, I think it was a number of things, but a journey as well. It wasn't just I realized that um, like I hated what I was doing, and things even with my social circle and that were quite difficult and everything, because I've never been your traditional young person of like clubbing and
Yeah.
kind of drinking alcohol and all these types of things. So I had that as well. Um, so yeah, I think it was just a process and a journey that I went through. Um, I actually remember. I did go to the doctors once, and I was like, kind of explained everything, and they gave me this prescription for these pills. But I was adamant that if I was going to overcome the anxiety and everything, that it wouldn't be through pills, basically. So how I've been able to do it is through a number of different things, through the whole personal development, so like meditation, regular exercise, like the basics. So actually some of it's, thinking about it now, is the basic stuff, right? It's the exercise, it's the watching what you're eating, it's sleep, like it's funny because over the last probably 6 months or so, I've become, I would say, pretty much self-aware with these things, and I noticed that when I get um, less amount of sleep, then it triggers certain certain things I was feeling when I a few years ago with the anxiety, right? So it's really, thinking about it now, actually, some of the basic stuff, a good night's sleep, watching what you're eating. It's the exercise. It's meditation, which for me has helped so much. It's the continued self education as well. I remember this one book I read by Tony Robbins. I forget. It was called. Oh, what was it called? I forgot it actually off the top of my head. It's a book he wrote a few years ago, I think. But I'll try and remember it. But I read this book, and it was like, wow, like how our mind works and everything. So I think for me, it was, answering your question, it was a journey and a process. Um, but actually, a lot of it is like the basic stuff. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I think a lot of the time we get so excited, or like so wrapped up in this idea that we all have to have this massive passion in life, and that we all have to, in order for us to be happy, that we have to have this one big thing that makes us
Mm,
really happy. But really, like happiness at its core is taking care of yourself and the basic things, your basic needs. So I totally
Yeah.
get it. It makes perfect sense. How could you have
Yeah.
anything else, right, if you don't have the basics?
Right. Right. Yes. Sorry. I was just gonna. So the book's actually called "Awaken the Giant Within" by Tony Robbins, and that was an
Oh,
awesome book that like really helped me. I also think through just being in personal development now, understanding and realizing what my beliefs were, my life values, and that really helped me as well. That whole like self-discovery process, I think I had to go through that to realize actually it's okay not to like what all of my social circle likes, because we're all different. It's okay that actually my goals and that right now is to build my business, and that is not to go out clubbing or
exactly.
whatever with them. That we're on different life paths. And I think when I was in that place, I thought that I was alone, like I was the only young person at the time. I was probably 19, 20, 21 that was like facing this. And it wasn't until I had that eureka moment that actually I'm not the only young person, because I met other young people that that were going through similar things. And yeah, that's where uh Grow Together came from, like I mentioned. But I think the life values and the principles and beliefs and all of that stuff, it might sound kind of like fluff stuff to a lot of young people, but I think it's so important to know what you stand for, because otherwise you're going to be living a life that's that are that can be in like the opposite of the things that you value. And that's where a lot of like the those anxieties and that come from. So yeah, I thought I wanted to mention that as well, because that's something that's really helped me.
I love that so much, especially about, find like standing up for what you like and the type of person that you want to be. And I think in correlation with that, and kind of to go off of that, you mentioned that, you weren't the typical young person that wanted to go to the club and so on and so on. And I can really relate to that now. And I'm curious about, how did you go about, explaining to your friends and your family around you what your interests were now?
Yeah.
Like, what did that look like for you?
No, so my family were like really supportive, and so yeah, they've always been, like be who you are, not who the world wants you to be, or all of those types of things. So I tried having conversations with my social circle at the time, my friends at the time, and it was interesting because they were saying one thing to my face, like, "Yeah, Luke, it's fine. We can go and do some other stuff," but then the actions didn't match what they were saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, that was, and then that actually added to the like the confusion I was facing, because I was like, what? So then I tried to have more conversations and more conversations and that. But I think at the end of the day, it was just I suppose I just accepted that actually we're different, and you know I just went to pursue my business and meet new like-minded people, um, and that really. So yeah, I think people need to try and have those conversations. But if your friends or your family aren't willing to have them, then as long as you can go to bed at night knowing that you've tried, that would be my number one piece of advice.
I love that. And so with Grow Together, it sounds incredible, and I know, like, I'm signed up for it and read the blog and all of these, different components of it. And what I like that you said is that um you help people find their passions. But I'm curious, like, how do you help people do that? Like, how do you help them find what it is that they're looking for? Is it through like
Mhm.
a one-on-one coaching, or is it like tips that you provide people? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so within the Grow Together like pillars and different framework in that, at the moment is through the academy. I do have one-to-one services and that I help people with, but it's mostly through the e-learning platforms. We have lots of exclusive content and courses and workshops over there that people go through. And actually within the academy we have like a private forum where people can engage with other like-minded people as well. um, So yeah, it's through that information and that knowledge from not just myself, but actually other mentors and coaches that I'm collaborating with as well. How how we actually do that though is like we're all passionate about something. You know, I actually was working with somebody last year, and we were on a call one day, and they said to me, Luke, I don't think I have my passion. And, I don't think I have a passion. Sorry. I was like, no, we all have something that we're passionate about. We all have something that, we love to do, or we love to talk about, or we love to, listen or watch, like whatever it is. And it's just igniting those within inside of us, for whatever reason, we can get into ruts and habits that aren't necessarily good for us. And so then that, then those passions not die away, but they're not ignited, right? You're not living those passions. And so, yeah, for me, it's about igniting them. And so there's a number of ways that I believe people can do this. I actually done a video on it the other day. I think one of the ways for me is through experiencing the opposite, right? So experiencing a lot of pain. And that's why, if you think about it, a lot of coaches and mentors actually get into what they do because they maybe experience the pain of a 9 to 5, or they experience the pain of like whatever it is, and then they realize that actually there's other people experiencing that pain, and so they want to help them. So example would be, you see a lot of coaches, let's just say, I help mums do this and this, right? Or I help mums with fitness, or I help mums with this, or I help dads with this. Does that make sense? You've probably seen so many coaches do that. And so what I believe is, because they have experienced the pain of those problems, they don't want to see other people go through it. So that's igniting their passion for that thing. Does that make
That
sense?
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was also just going to say, another way that I think a lot of younger people can find their passion is by going out there and trying new things, just trying things. I think rather than sitting around watching Netflix, now there's nothing wrong with Netflix or anything like that, but instead of doing that 24 hours, 7 days a week, how about people go and try different things to see what they're passionate about? So that's also something that I encourage. So if somebody is 18 or 19, they may have experienced some types of pain that they can help people with, or maybe at the moment they don't have that life experience, but what they can do is get up, off the sofa or whatever it is, and go and try stuff to see what ignites them.
That's so true. I found myself in that similar situation probably about, I want to say about a year and a half ago now. And I was so frustrated because I was like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. Like, I have no idea. But I wasn't doing anything about it. And I would just come home and
Mm.
like do nothing and sit on my couch and do nothing and wonder why I couldn't figure out what it was I wanted to do. Or like, I didn't have like a hobby or anything like that. Like if someone asked you like, oh, what do you do for fun? I'd be like, I go out, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so I think that's really important to know that there's things, even like in your community, if you want like an activity or things you can do online, you can take a course. Like there's so many things you can do, like listen to YouTube videos or whatever, to try and find what it is you're
Yeah.
interested in. I think that's really important to remember.
100%. It's that exploring, getting curious about different paths, and that I think, especially growing up, we get taught the still the traditional route of doing things, right? And so we have to be curious enough to actually try other things outside of that. um so yeah, I think curiosity here does play a huge part.
It definitely does. Do you know, I'm sure you must, Jay Shetty?
Of course, yes.
Okay. So I was listening to his podcast yesterday and he was talking about, passion and purpose. And I'm curious about your thoughts on this just based on the conversation we're having. And he said that, in life, like we don't just have like one passion. So throughout life, we'll have more than one passion and our passions will change. And, our purpose will change, as we get older, as we try different things. And I never really thought about it that way. I always kind of thought that most people kind of stick to their lane, what they really like, and kind of do that. But what are your thoughts? Like, do you think that we all have different passions as we grow?
100%. Just now, again, I done a video on this the other day. um I have multiple passions. I'm passionate about what I'm doing right now. I'm passionate about football, soccer for our American friends, or Canadian friends, or like wherever they are in the world. I'm passionate about that. That's a huge passion of mine. Um, I think the challenge is when we are maybe like wanting to start a business around it. We may try and do multiple things. So we may start a clothing brand because we're passionate about that, or then we may start a coaching business because we're passionate about that, or a sports business because we're passionate about that. And so what happens is we're building multiple bridges. Like the bridge for this, the
Hmm.
bridge. Um, and so we're not focusing on one bridge. So then that bridge never gets completed. So I think people need to be mindful of that. Now, thinking about what I'm doing, I'm building Grow Together. I'm building the Motivational Mentors podcast, right? So people could say that is two bridges. If you can find a link, though, that can link the ideas or passions together, then I think it's much easier to build more than one thing. So for me, for both things I'm doing, it's in the same industry, the same niche. One's not in car racing or sport, and the other one's in mindset, personal development. That's not to say that as I grow, as I get older, that I'm not going to go out and pursue those things. I think I think it's actually easier when you build one thing, and that thing is running. You've got systems in place. Then you can go out and pursue even more things. So that's ultimately my vision. Is not just to build Grow Together or the Motivational Mentors podcast. It's to build multiple businesses and brands. But right now, it's focusing on that two bridges at the maximum, and finding the link between the two, so I stay focused and on course.
I love that. It's so, so, so good. And if you're someone who has like a lot of different interests, or someone who isn't exactly sure, where they kind of want to go into and expand, what would be like the one tip that you would say to help like provide the most amount of clarity to your own self to have an idea of where you want to go, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. I think. Yeah. I think. So do they, just using this example, do they already have lots of ideas, or are they um, kind of like they don't have ideas? Does that make sense?
I'm curious about like when they don't have
You
ideas,
don't have
because I think
ideas.
when you
Yeah.
have an idea, like you kind of have like an easy path, not an easy path, but you have more context into what you want to do. But if you don't have any ideas at all, like what's a good place to start?
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned it earlier. Just go out there and try things.
Yeah.
Like if you have no ideas, or don't think you have a passion, and we all do it, they just need igniting. But go out there and try things. So maybe it's take up a new sport, or maybe it's like take up a new sport, or start I don't know, playing an instrument, or you know with a friend, go and do something often, or like whatever it is. um, or from or from your past, or from the things that you've done before. Think of things that have linked to that. So if you think back to maybe your childhood and the things you like to do then. So for me, like when I was younger, I used to play football like all the time. So that's still a huge passion of mine. Because I loved it then, I love it now. I think that can help as well, because I don't. Yeah, if you loved what a sport when you were younger, then what happened along the way where you fell out of love with it? And
So true.
it's all part of that. It's all part of that self discovery process, I believe. So if there's people out there right now who don't have ideas, but they believe there's more than what they are experiencing, and they want to live their passion in that, I would highly recommend just to go out there and try things. And it could be anything. It could be the smallest thing, because you never know where that small thing will go, and what it will blossom into.
That's so true. I'm curious, out of all the things that you tried, I mean, you ended up in podcasting. So, how did you get into podcasting? How did you know you wanted to do it? And tell us a little bit more about both of your shows. I think it'd be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, definitely. So the Motivational Mentors podcast with obviously my co-host Arsenio came about last year. So we're actually a year old now.
Wow.
And yeah. So it was a year ago. So how that came about was I connected with Arsenio through a Gary V post in the January.
Yes.
And he has, so he's a huge podcaster. He has two podcasts. He has a English learning podcast because he teaches that out there in Thailand, and he has his personal development podcast, which is the Arsenio Buck Show. So I went on to his Arsenio Buck Show after we made the connection in that, and then we stayed in touch. I think we were um, sharing ideas with each other, back and forth, how we could both improve what we were both doing. And then one day I was just like, how can I work with this guy more? Because as he's an awesome guy, and his energy and everything is contagious. So we hopped on a call, and I was like, how can we work together more? We came up with some ideas, and then the podcast was just an easy idea that we could do right away, really. So we've done some planning in that, and yeah, a year later, here we are. So that's how that podcast started. My other podcast, which is we're just about to launch, like I mentioned before, it's going to be with the Grow Together community members and that. And so, yeah, I wanted to. So that's going to be audio and video.
Cool.
Um, yeah. So I wanted again to find another way that how I could give the community members a voice, to share things that they're going through, really, and their experiences, because I think that would be super valuable for other people out there. So yeah, that was my idea concept for that one. But before all of that, I did start doing a lot of like YouTube videos and that before, and then when we launched the Motivation Mentors podcast, I did kind of not do so many. So from I suppose day one of being in this space, I've always been trying to create content and that. And before I did do a lot of videos, but no, I love videos and podcasts. So yeah, both are
That's
enjoyable.
awesome. And how do you get yourself motivated?
Great question.
Like, what's like the one thing?
Yeah, people ask me this, and I find it not. I suppose I find it a little bit challenging to answer, because I just wake up every day and it's like, right, what's to do today? Like let's just keep going type of thing to help other people. So I think it's that vision and that mission. I also think it's the fear of not having any regrets in life as well. Like for me, I don't want to be, when I'm 80, sitting in my rocking chair and like, oh, Luke, you should have done this, you could have done this. It's like scares the shit out of me. So like yeah. So I think those three things are definitely the main ones. But yeah, like if I reflect on it and think about it, every day I just wake up and like, okay, do my morning routine and just crack on with the day. So I mean, there are some times where maybe the energy isn't fully there. I think then it's important to go back to that vision and that mission, but also to practice that self-care. You don't have to hustle 24/7. It comes back into self-awareness. Maybe people like that and that suits them, and that's what they do. And then there's other people who maybe need to find a little bit more balance and that. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, yeah, it totally does. And you threw in the word morning routine in there. So I'm curious, um, with your morning routine, do you do it every single morning? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, every morning. So wake
Wow.
up, do some like stretches and that, and then we dive into brain dumping. So through self-awareness, I realized that when I first wake up in the morning, my mind is buzzing with ideas and just loads of thoughts. So I get them out onto paper. Some interesting ideas have come from that, actually, I've realized. And so I do that. Then there's some meditation, affirmations, vision boards. There's connecting with the overall vision, mission, go over my goals, um, and then we just pretty much then crack into the rest of the day. Sometimes I might take a shower. I usually do some form of exercise in the evening rather than the morning.
Yeah.
Just because I feel that works better for me right now. And then that's pretty much it. Dive in to my day.
I love that. Do you have any lessons that you've learned through failure?
Yeah, free failure. I think when something doesn't go to plan, um, to be flexible enough to change to then continue to move forward. So I'm all about moving forward, So if something doesn't go to plan or you fail with something, it's about taking the lessons so you continue to move forward, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I think that sometimes we can get stuck in, failure or something that didn't go right. And like a lot of people can, beat themselves up about why X, Y, and Z didn't work. And I think it's so important to just pick yourself back up and move forward and, acknowledge what the failure was and, that it was a learning lesson and kind of, you know, continue on.
Mm-hmm. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. So yeah, I mean, as soon as I get off this podcast, I'll probably have loads more of ideas and
I know,
concepts
right?
and that. So, but yeah, I think for me, because I am all about moving forward. I think if something doesn't go to plan, or you feel like you fail at something, or whatever it is, just take the lessons. Um, that's what I do with my weekly review. It's like what's worked, what hasn't worked, from what hasn't worked, the lessons, and just learning from them.
Do you think that doing something like a weekly review is like a key part, to being an entrepreneur? Like, do you think that that's something that people who are entrepreneurs should be doing on a regular basis?
I think everyone should be doing it. I do, because it increases, like for me, it's increased so much more self awareness. Because you're checking in every week. For me, it looks something like what's worked, great. Still, doubling down on that. What hasn't worked, okay. So again, you're becoming more self aware to the things, or aware of what hasn't worked, which is only a good thing, to then change. So yeah, I think weekly routines or reflections can come in all different formats. In that, mine works for me, and again, that's been a process of trying different things. But I think everyone should be doing it. I know so many people who are so unorganized, and if they just spent an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on a Sunday looking at their week and planning things a bit more, then they would relieve so much more stress and anxiety during that week. So yeah, I think everyone should be doing it.
That's such a good point, especially going into your week with like a lot of clarity around what you want to do, the goals that you accomplish. And, even if you don't get through like the whole to-do list, at least you have it down on paper that, because life happens, like it gets in the way. Like
Mm,
sometimes we aren't able to get through every single thing that we wanted to that week. And I think that that's okay. I mean, the goal is obviously to complete the to-do list, but if it doesn't happen, then I think it's okay, you know?
yeah. I think if it doesn't happen, I think a lot of people need to check what's on that to do list as well. Like,
Yeah.
you know, are the things on your to do list going to move you forward? Now, of course, we probably all have things that, um, like you say, life happens. So life happen type of things. If I refer to them as that, but then the things that are going to move you towards your goals, are they the actual things that go into do that, or is it checking your email?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
you
Oh,
know,
check that one
you
off the
know.
list. I find that I have like extremely like ambitious goals for every single week. So I know
Mm,
that they're really ambitious. So for me personally, if I don't hit them all, because I do work, a job during the day. So it's finding the time to take all of those ambitious goals and to actually do them. And I know that maybe one or two every week won't get done, but that's okay because, you have more time to do them in the future. But yeah, so I just thought that that was interesting.
yeah, I mean, so for me, yeah, if I don't complete anything during the week, it just moves over to the next week.
Exactly.
But it becomes the top of the to do list, or the top of the schedule for that week. So, um,
Exactly.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. Do you have any advice for someone who's listening right now that, might be working a 9 to 5 and wants to be an entrepreneur? Like, do you have any advice or any tips on entrepreneurship for our listeners?
Yeah. Dive straight into it. Dive straight into it. I think there is a research. a research process to go through. But if somebody's right now, in their chair or driving in their car or wherever they are listening to this, and they're playing with the idea, I would say commit to the decision to do it, to start your business or to start something online, or even if it's start a YouTube channel or start a podcast. I would say make the decision to start it, and then take an action in that direction, like straight away or within the first few hours you make that decision. One lesson I have learned from my journey when I first started is that I should have done more research. So I want to throw that out there to listeners. I should have done more research, but I think people can overthink getting started. And so what I do want to encourage is obviously do research. Otherwise, you could make the same mistakes I did, but don't overthink it. Even if it's a podcast, even if it's some form of YouTube series or whatever it is, start sharing your thoughts, your experiences, your story, and over time it will grow and develop.
I love that. And do you think that, if you're about to start something new, do you think that attaching a goal date, like a launch date to something is helpful? Like by this date, if you're wanting to do a podcast, for example, this is the date that I want to launch my podcast and it's a hard date and I can't move it. Like, because I feel like for people who have a hard time getting started or like, you know what, I'm gonna start it next week. I'll do it next week. Do you find it's helpful to have a goal in place, a goal date in place?
So again, I think it's down to self-awareness, like what works for each individual person. When I first got started, I didn't really have, by this date I would start a podcast, or by this, I would do this, or by this I would do this. Probably in the last, I don't know, 6 months, I've started to do like more of those. And obviously I have bigger goals and visions that have rough timelines, but I think it is down to self-awareness, and if that helps you to get stuff done, then definitely go, run with it, type of thing.
That's awesome. Who would be someone that inspires you, and why do they inspire you? What lessons did you learn from them? What takeaway was really important for you?
Yeah. So I think with this, for me anyway, you have the people out there like Gary Vaynerchuk, Tony Robbins, Jay Shetty, top influencers and business people in their space that I think, with their content, they inspire all of us. I think though, nearly, nearly every single person I've connected with online, I've been able to learn something from, especially on the podcast, especially on the Motivation Mentors podcast. Now we're at 52 episodes. We probably about 42 of those are with guests, and like all of them, I probably couldn't tell you right now of one thing I've learned from every single guest, but I know that on those podcasts I've came away thinking, oh shit, or I've had a realization, or during the podcast I've wrote down loads of notes or scribbled them down. So yeah, of course, I have people I watch online with um, Gary Vaynerchuk and everyone, but I think on the podcast that I'm doing, and just people I'm connecting with online, like-minded people online, I've been able to learn so much from them. So I couldn't pick out like an individual person, just because there's so many people I've learned so many things from,
Of course.
and I don't. If I'm being honest, I don't think one thing's valuable than the other, because I think it's all as valuable to me because it all helps me to move forward. I think working with Arsenio is a pleasure and it's awesome on the podcast. So yeah, sorry I can't pick anyone out.
No, I think it's so important to be able to have more than one person that you can like look up to and learn things from. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that everyone we meet in life, there's some takeaway that we can, take away from their story or, from their experiences. Like every person can teach you something, whether it's a learning lesson or, whether it's a small way to shift your mindset or like a different way to, manage expectations or whatever it is. There's value in the way that other people do things. So I think it's really important to have more than one. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think for me it would be a little bit unfair to point someone out. But no, because I've learned so much from everyone, really. Even yourself, I think even your podcast was awesome. I learned so much about obviously you and your story and your journey. And I remember coming away from that one like all the others, with like realizations or notes or like whatever it was at the time.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. It's so good to hear because you never really know. You hope that what you share and your experiences will help other people. But I don't know that we always get to hear how we've made an impact in somebody's life. So it's awesome to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, 100%.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share with our listeners today? Anything that you feel they should hear or know?
I think we've covered a lot, especially, what I'm working on right now with helping people to ignite their passions and ideas and make them happen. I would, probably just echo most things or repeat most things that I've said in the podcast. I would just encourage people to always strive towards becoming or working towards being a better them every day, move towards that and making their ideas and their passions happen because they have the power to do so. So those would probably be my closing thoughts.
I love it. And I have one final question for you, and it's a question that I ask everyone. What is one thing that people can do to integrate a little bit more happiness into their lives every day?
Great question. I think just be in the moment more.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And so just be in the moment more. I think we are as a society busy, and I think if we can just be in the moment more, appreciate what's around us, I think that'll go a long way to help.
I love that. That's so important to remember. I love it. Luke, thank you so much for being here today and for being on the show. I know that this episode is going to resonate with so many people, and I can't wait for everyone to hear your thoughts. So I've loved that that you're here and that you've taken the time to be with all of us today.
No, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to today's episode. If something resonated with you, please let us know. Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the reviews. And have a wonderful week. Thanks so much for being here today. I hope these words have brought you inspiration, insight, and a bit more happiness. Please leave a comment or a review if this episode resonates with you. I would be so grateful. Until next time, remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.